Thank you to our sponsors once again. And now it's time for our next session, Future Trends in Fashion and Retail 2021 and beyond. I would like to introduce our moderator, Mr. Yashpal Sharma, Vice President ACFI and Managing Director Skyways Groups, which has now grown to 11 companies in 27 cities in India and abroad in Germany, Vietnam.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Parul, am I audible now?
Yes, perfect.
And you can see me as well?
Not yet.
Or you can't see me yet?
Yes.
I think they're still playing the video screen.
IT, please switch to the members view. Thank you. You are good to go, Yash.
Lovely, fantastic. Thank you, Parul, for the lovely introduction of mine. And regret the small little technical glitch to get me on the screen.
Yash, we still can't see you though. Yash, we still can't see you though.
You still can't see me.
No.
Are the other panelists able to see me?
No, no, we can see your name as Yash, not the face.
I should be on the center of the screen. I mean, there should be one of. Do you see me?
You're on the stage, yes.
Well, I'm on the stage, absolutely.
Now we see you. Now we see you. Yeah.
I'm always a stage man. They have to put me on stage. They don't allow
We were looking for you. We were looking for you on the side, but we didn't realize you have to be in the center.
Always and always. So thank you very much, Parul, once again, and very good afternoon to everybody in India. Good evening to everybody on the east of India, and good morning to everybody on the west of India. We've got a very diverse panel and a very diverse list across India. The session is a very interesting session. It's one of my favorite product line, which is apparel and fashion. The apparel and fashion industry is roughly 2.2 trillion industry across the world. And as we all know, it is one of the biggest employers around the world. It won't be wrong in saying that there is a spread of wealth which is created around multiple countries because of this industry. The consumption and manufacturing, which started from one part, gradually moved on to the other countries. The manufacturing moved on to the other countries, largely on the back of supporting costs. The industry has created not just wealth, but it has led to creating economic growth for many economies around the world. So the apparel industry of the 21st century has been built on a very complex yet very efficient supply chain. One could have a cotton shirt which is designed in Canada, the cotton probably plucked in Amazon, the yarn built in China, and the manufacturing of the shirt happening in Indonesia, and finally it gets worn by a final consumer up in Stockholm. Most apparel and footwear companies have been focusing on the urgent business challenges, largely on the back of manufacturing, sourcing, inventory management, and order fulfillment. Fashion has always been also the hotbed of innovation. The industry has remained right in the forefront of innovation, just like the tech industry. The 2020 as a year has been an absolutely incredible year. The apparel and fashion industry also had its own set of challenges with 2020. The global demand actually plummeted at the end of Q1 of 2020 and went on to create massive disruptions around the world. The apparel imports in the United States itself dropped 23.5% in 2020 over 2019. Various companies around the world had catastrophic impact of coronavirus crisis on them. The Hong Kong-based TAL Group, who probably manufactures 1 out of every 6 shirts which is worn in United States, saw their business drop by 70%. The manufacturing dropped by 70%. They have factories in Thailand, Vietnam, Hong Kong, China, and had to move their product portfolio from manufacturing of common garments to making of masks. Many companies around the world had to do the same, alter their product portfolio from the normal garments that they were manufacturing to probably manufacturing of PPE kits. The costs and global political pressures have seen big buyers around the world constantly change their manufacturing base. China, which has been one of the most sought after base around the world by various apparel buyers, had lost its share, which was about 35.9% in 2015, to about 23% in 2020. Vietnam, on the other hand, which was at 12% in 2015, went up to about 19.5% in 2020. But as we have seen over the last century, periods of global crisis have consistently accelerated transformational society shift and can be strategic inflection points for businesses. Growth periods bring too much of inertia, and crises always fire up the appetite to change. As brick and mortar sales declined in 2020, it made difficult for people around the world to go to stores, and online was really the savior for many organizations around the world. The change of consumer habits led and made loads of apparel companies change their product portfolio, from making of formal dresses to possibly moving on to wearing comfort wear and casual wear. Most apparel companies around the world completely changed their product portfolio. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a very distinguished panel with me who will talk about various transformations 2020 has brought to the business and how air cargo and their stakeholders are altering their strategies to meet the need of this incredible industry. Though Parul has done a brief introduction about my panel, I would still like to introduce them just very quickly. Samir Khatri, who's the Regional Director, India Subcontinent, and Managing Director, India for DSV Air and Sea. DSV, which has got 1,300 plus global offices in 80 plus countries and has more than 55,000 employees. Dr. Anil Chinnabhandar, Senior Vice President, Landmark Group, with 46 brands, 2,200 plus stores, 24 countries in the Middle East, Africa, and India, with leading brands like Lifestyle, Max Fashion, Splash, Home Center, etc., is also part of our panel. Kirsten de Bruin, Senior Vice President, Qatar Airways Cargo, largest cargo airline in the world with a fleet of 26 freighters and 168 passenger aircrafts. We have Max Philip Conradi, Senior Vice President, Cargo, for Frankfurt Airport, one of the largest airports in the world, with 98 plus airlines flying to and from it and serving about 390 destinations around the world. Needless to say, Frankfurt acts as a very strong gateway to entire Europe. We have Prediman Koul. He's the Executive Director for G9 Company. G9 Company, with 120 plus years of existence, is currently led by a fourth generation founder family. They have more than 1,200 employees and presence in 28 cities in India. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get going. I will open the discussion by seeking a very quick couple of minutes comment from each of our panelists. And I would like you to tell us how you have seen in the last 12 months change of consumer, retailer, and supply chain behaviors around the world. Let me bring in the lady to start with. Kirsten, over to you, and let's hear your opening comments, please.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Thank you, Yash. Obviously we have seen a drastic impact on the world, but also on aviation. If you look at the behavior, the market, and related to air cargo and what we do in transport, is obviously we saw a drastic cut in capacity overall, which made us even more pick and choose of what we were operating. Of course, we did our best to supply the capacity as much as possible with passenger freighters. And luckily, the pricing and the rates, at least for the airlines, then sustained that operation. But moreover, we saw a significant drop in general cargo and also in garments. But also more of a pick and choose from the airline, because we base priority on essential needs. And based on essential needs, obviously, the PPE equipment, but also pharmaceuticals, were always leading in that conversation. On top of that, food material, of course, was something very crucial, specifically because we supplied this country with all the foods. So it had a huge impact on the way that we prioritized the cargo, and still today it has not changed with India still having the travel bubble and being relatively closed. We have actually seen a continuation of what we did when COVID hit us.
Lovely, Kirsten. Let me
Thank
go
you.
over to Dr. Anil. Could I have some of your comments on the change of consumer behavior?
Sorry, Yash, you fell away.
Am I audible? Thank you, Kirsten, for your comments. Could we go over to Dr. Anil and seek his comments from a customer perspective, how he's seen consumer behaviors change?
Thank you, Ash, and good day, everyone. Yeah, the opening comments, like what did we see? For example, exactly similar time last year, right? February, this is when 2020, we were hit with the tsunami, almost, close to that, right? All of a sudden, we were told to shut shops. We were told to not move, just get jailed in your own homes and so on. Whether it is a good or a bad or ugly, we all realize it a little later. But then from the business point of it, we were the whole train, our whole actually lifestyle came to a standstill just like that, right? And then what did we do? Probably last week of March onwards, right? We got into a big black hole. We didn't even realize it actually, what was happening. So slowly we had to really start going around. Okay, we have shut the shops, we had to shut the warehouses, we have shut the offices. And then, but what happens actually to the livelihood of, people who are related, inventory that we are holding, and our retail stores? And then what happens to actually our most important part, which is on one end vendors or suppliers, on the other end it's actually consumers. It was kind of a big black hole until end of April, right? That's when we started realizing that, oh, this is not going to actually just go away like that, because all of us thought it's like one of those, actually Prime Minister Narendra Modi actually had a Janta curfew of 1 day, complete stoppage of everything. We thought actually it was almost like, it was something similar to that, but it wasn't so. It actually ended up for weeks and then, months together. And then when we came back, or we were trying to come back, we realized that everything had changed. Everything has changed actually forever. We had never ever thought this kind of actually situation could come in which the entire actually the supply chain or the value chain has almost like, come to a standstill, and we don't even know when it's going to be opened up. So it was a very big kind of a wake-up call, if you really, in some sense. We had to really rejig, in fact, our offices, inventory, people, consumers, factories, everybody, right? So in some sense, it was a time for us to ponder upon actually, introspect, what the heck is happening around us actually? How are we, going to do business actually with this kind of a thing? And once the lockdown was lifted, fortunately for India, when we see a lot of other countries are still struggling actually with the wave 2 and so on, we are kind of relatively, untouched and unaffected right now in the Indian community perspective. You see a huge change in the customer behavior. You see a lot of tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns now making sales bigger than actually metro towns. Consumers are saying, by the way, we don't want to go to actually Bangalore at all. We don't want to go to Mumbai. We don't want to go to Delhi. The metros actually are a scary place right now. The reverse migration actually happened. So a lot of latent actually demand is coming now from non-metro, places and so on. Similarly, we had to, help vendors. Whole lot of actually things have changed, right? So we are trying to undo bit by bit. So this was like a big pause button for all of us to kind of introspect and then kind of check our own strategies, check our own working methods, check our own intent to do business. That's exactly what happened, I think, because of COVID. We will anyway get into some of the details actually a little later in the session. But to me, this was like a big shock given to, electric shock given to everyone in the supply chain, and then kind of actually reassess your own positions actually. That's what I had to say in the opening comments. Thank you, Yash.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Anil. Very interesting. I'll just stay with you for another second. I would like to just understand what happened upstream for you. Did you have any change of your possible vendors? Because obviously the lockdown period would have made a lot of retailers like yourself very jittery of how you're going to procure your raw material, Where is some of your upstream vendors going to come from? Did it bring about any kind of a change in your strategy with regard to that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's a big change right now, because right now, as we speak, we have a huge problem on raw material side. Whether raw material itself, has enough been produced, because our consumption pattern has changed dramatically. You have lot of knits coming through rather than ovens. In fact, we have a huge demand for the knitwear right now, right? So there's a huge challenge on the manufacturing of yarn and manufacturing actually of the raw material, pertaining to those areas, right? Also, what has happened? A lot of factories, in fact, have spare capacities right now because they don't have the raw materials. A lot of factories have to change from their product actually offering that to change from ovens, or even actually some of the fashion into some of the core or even the basic range and things like that. Similarly, transport, what's happened? I mean, even today, the second wave, unfortunately, is likely to kind of hit and affect quite a few of our states and so on. We again have got some embargoes right now. What has that led to? That has led to actually price increases. And most importantly, one of the previous panelists, actually, they were talking about reliability in retail. Now, that reliability has become a big question in terms of the upfront. So in terms of actually we getting raw material to the factories and they manufacturing and then getting it into the customer, because the consumer demand is here and now. You don't have the luxury of 30 days, 90 days, 120 days and all that, what used to be the previous case. Consumers need the products now because they've shifted to a new variety altogether. So all these things have really made, the supply chain fraternity, right from procurement, or the buying teams, and then even the supply chain teams on the tender hooks actually, because right now we are all struggling actually to cope up with the demand of what we don't have, but we do not have the demand for what we have. For example, the fashion. Now, fashion is actually in the last on the list of a lady right now. So these are all some of the challenges that we are facing right now.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for giving us the insights. Of course, it must have been extremely challenging for various retailers to build their supply streams in such a difficult coronavirus pandemic crisis. Let me go over to the airport, and I will also bring the carrier in. I would like to understand, because there must have been loads of government pressures to move essentials and healthcare around the world. How were you able to prioritize handling of other general commodities like fashion and apparels at the airports as well as the carrier? Let me bring in Max first, and then we'll follow it up with Kirsten and just get a little insights into this. Max.
Good morning, good afternoon, good day to everyone joining this panel session. Yes, from an airport perspective, it's us as an operator, we can't change the cargo stream by ourselves or by our own decisions. We have to handle what is thrown at us, and what we've seen in last March and April was a big rush of PPE equipment coming to Europe as it's needed due to the pandemic. And until now, over 6.5 billion face masks has been transported over Frankfurt Airport. And for us as an airport and all the other supply chain guys working on the airport, it's important to adapt to this situation, to be flexible and to get the handling running for this new kind of services that's been needed. And what was additionally saw that we've got in change from export goods, and especially Germany is known as an export-oriented country. We have a big change from export to imports, and we have a huge increase of the number of packages. So in general, there been a 30% up in number of packages to be handled at Frankfurt Airport, sometimes on weekends up to 40-50%. So all the cargo handlers and all the ground handlers, and we're doing ground handling by ourselves at Frankfurt Airport as well. We have to adopt to this new kind of cargo stream coming in, and it's been additional demand for flexibility due to all the cargo planes, the passenger planes that are handling cargo nowadays often come along with cabin load. So you have to adopt your ground handling equipment to serve the upper deck loadings and to find all the different parcels maybe hidden in the pantry just to transport as much as PPE equipment as possible to Europe. And This market changes have been driven by the yield, and as Kirsten already said, that fortunately the yield allows the airlines to use this passenger planes for serving the cargo needs. But with this yield-driven changes, you see that some regions and some products are not transported as we've seen before. So we saw a huge increase in pharmaceutical, in PPE equipment, as well as in high tech. So for home office, like I'm right now, or just home play equipment, monitors and something like that, and huge decrease, especially in the numbers when it comes to fast fashion and things like that. But I think we come later to it, Josh.
Thank you. Thank you, Max. And yes, of course, it must have been a very, very interesting change around the world. I'm sure, the carriers must have been really have to be very much on their toes with regards to their deployment of capacity, Kirsten. With some of the markets which are export dominated, like Max said, and suddenly getting influx of more imports. Did it bring a lot of challenge to you, Kirsten, to actually define how you're going to position your capacities around the world, especially for catering to general products like fashion and apparels?
Thank you, Yash. Yeah, absolutely. Because again, like I said, the pharmaceuticals, the essential goods, the PPE, but also food items. You saw a lot of governments, installing subsidies, etc., in order to stimulate food programs, etc., coming into their country. But also, you saw a lot of countries that were actually subsidizing the export to make sure that the countries that were the exporters and supplying the other countries were still able to do that. So with that, there was a lot of up and forth. Where do we operate? Of course, being the airline and having no passenger transportation, there was a lot of stress on cash preservation. So we also couldn't operate where we wouldn't cover the variable cost of the operation, and knowing that we didn't have any other income. Now, specifically for India, obviously, where we were always quite dominant in garments and retail, we suddenly had the influx of the food that we had to transport into Qatar, but also in the rest part of the world, mostly in Europe. We saw everybody fighting for capacity because every government and every country wanted their fair share. Now, luckily, we are blessed with a lot of freighters. We are blessed with quite some passenger aircraft that we were able to deploy. In terms of retail, obviously, because the pricing went up, because the airlines had to cover their variable costs, we did see quite a tremendous drop in the amount of ready-made garments. The retailers on this panel can tell that more if that was mostly pricing related or consumption behavior related. But of course, some retailers chose to go to the C product. The store shut down. So we saw a completely different origin to destination setup than we had ever seen before. And it relied quite on the flexibility of the network planning team in the organization to ensure that we did not only look at profitability, but also at our responsibility towards the governments and the countries that we do business with to supply them with these essential needs. So yeah, it really went from pure doing business and looking at what is best for the airline, taking into account way more components to decide what we would do and where we would transport the cargo, what cargo, and which plane. So yeah, there were suddenly much more stakeholders involved than previously when you were just the airline beating the competition and doing your business. It suddenly became a very political, sensitive, sustainable solution that we had to deal with and that we had to manage. So yeah, it definitely changed.
Yeah, I can just imagine the kind of stress carriers would have had to take at that particular point of time, but that was obviously the need of the hour. Let me go over to the freight forwarders and let me just get their perspective, because obviously, with the shift from traditional freight forwarding to a lot of small parcel shipments, how, Samir, do you see your organization and other logistics service providers around trying to transform the way they function and handle shipments And how is your organization possibly making that shift from traditional freight forwarding to handling of e-commerce logistics? Samir? Samir, can you hear us? Samir?
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I was muted. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me on this panel. I'm really honored to be part of this esteemed panel. I just would just reflect back a little bit, and Anil did say exactly about a year back is when things started to unravel. It was, supply chain has remained, and all of us represent some component of the supply chain or the other, has remained the centerpiece of global business for many, many years now, in fact, decades. Logistics service providers have remained a little bit total nucleus of that whole supply chain model and have always been under pressure to meet the customer demands, the consumer demands. And the time that we faced in 2020, starting March or February, March, and then onwards was harrowing, to say the least. Even though countries had gone into lockdown, but there was still equipment to be moved, goods to be moved, essentials to be moved, medicines, pharmaceutical products to be moved, and thus there was a lot of pressure. And we had to step up to meet that demand and try and create an environment which was able to meet our customers' requirements across the world. So we had to change our ways of working. We were restricted in many ways in many parts of the world, including India, of course. But we had to maneuver a lot of the supply chain components in order to still continue to meet the demands of our consumers across the world. So that was one part of it. And then coming to your question that you posed with regard to retail and the fact that a lot of the brick and mortar stores had closed down, so there was a lot of pressure on the e-com side of the business, and that had to. So we had a change in our mindset from a player who was very used to basically looking at movement of large loads. We had to change our focus to transactional business. We had to change our focus to ensure that we had technology created to be able to give live information on the inventory in the DCs, or the distribution centers of our customers. We had to ensure that we were able to create capacity. Of course, our partner airlines and shipping carriers helped there. So it was quite a transformation, and we are still in that phase right now, Yash. And I don't think so we have got over it. It still continues, and we would need to reinvent our supply chain models as we go every day.
Yeah, I'm sure that it must have been a challenge, and being another logistics service provider ourselves, I know the transformation and the challenges that we faced in the last 10 months on it. Let me go to Prediman, and Prediman, I mean, you guys are pretty active on the fashion and apparel industry. How and what kind of value additions have you actually been looking at doing or bringing to the apparel retailers around the world? Could you just give us a little insights into any possible value additions that you have been doing?
Sure, Yash. Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be here. So basically, as you said, this fashion and retail is one of our major verticals in the whole organization. And we have been looking at this vertical globally for several years now. And if all of us must be remembering, even before the COVID hit us, the global retail was kind of a stagnant in global big markets. It was not growing really great, except India. India was one of the different story where the retail was growing 20+%, out of which maybe e-commerce was growing 30-35% year on year. So we also had seen certain these stores, high street stores, having pressure of footfalls, but this pandemic has actually taken fast track of everything. Those traditional store kind of a concept has altogether changed, and We saw, like Mr. Anil said, it was like a shock, even for us being the big forwarder in the retail space. And our big buyers overseas, they also were in same kind of a shock that how to do business from tomorrow. And then there were a lot of interactions. There were a lot of, they shared with us the plans, how we can do it. And we had to consolidate the situation. We created the alignment as per their requirements. We saw those buyers who had already initiated their e-commerce space. They were already doing the online thing. And some of them were the omni-channel presence everywhere. So they could still sustain and continue their sales. And we saw suddenly after a month or maybe even 3 weeks, we saw orders coming in, and most of them were those buyers who had this online channel. And we had to collaborate to create value, like you said, and we started setting up for few who are even 100% e-commerce global brands, for them some warehouses processing here, QC centers here, the technology integration. So those were a lot of value additions, and they could see the visibility what's happening right from the PO level till the garment or any retail commodity. It's on either a container on ship or an aircraft. So that was, and I see it's a continuous process adding value. This disruption has actually created a lot of thinking in everybody's mind, and no different in the retailers. So I think retailers and any other businesses also, they would like to think now how to create a digital difference, because that will become the core of everything now going forward. How to build the supply chain which is trustworthy, which can be certain gaps in the supply chain throughout this pandemic initially, at least. So are we ready for any such event? God forbid it happens, but there could be any other way of disruption. And health and safety has become now again a focus area. When anybody goes to a store, he first sees everything is fine. There is sanitization, people are wearing masks, there is proper protocol maintained. So this also becomes one of the strategy now. It's not just the side business. And the cost alignment, which was always there, but now it has taken again a front stage, because you have to be commodity, you have to be competitive in the smaller pie today, which the whole retail space is offering to us.
Right.
So this would be a continuous process, and I'm sure industry is gearing up to it. I saw when issues were there with the physical documentation, you can't carry, people can't go, the customs, the government, the freight forwarders, airports, we are aligned immediately on the technology side. And today we can say we are very much near the paperless transactions. Thank you. I think that's from me.
Thank you. Thank you, Prediman, for the great insights. And you spoke about the omni-channel strategy for the retailers. Let us bring Dr. Anil in at this moment and ask him what has been the change in their omni-channel strategy, and going forward, do they look at probably downsizing their 2,200 odd stores, or is it going to be a good hybrid mix that they will continue to have on their sales front?
Thanks again, Ish. I think Prediman mentioned actually pretty much what is happening, or what's actually kind of the customer or consumer sentiment right now in the community, right? Like exactly what he said, right? Back in the April, May itself, when the market was started slowly opening up, right? We were ready because, we already had embarked this omni-channel journey almost 2 years ago. I mean, what was omni-channel? I mean, customer, by the way, my customer, fashion customer, I would like to actually refer it as she, because she is the queen actually. Customer is the queen for us, right? Because she's the one who buys for herself, and then buys for the children, actually the young mom, and then buys even for her, actually even family also. Of course, buys, a little bit for her husband as well, right? So she is the kind of a, nucleus of the entire, consumerism right now, in India. Now, when she was locked down, I mean, mind you, retail and then, buying is almost like, there's a bit of a nasha in that, right? A bit of an addiction is there in that. We very quickly realized in the month of April and May itself, there was a huge latent need from the consumers actually to buy actually apparel. And then what kind of apparel? Definitely not the fashionable ones, not the trendy ones, not some of the ones which was actually being being kind of considered as actually for the parties and then your functions and things like that. She wanted to look better at home. You are logged in your own houses 24/7. I mean, after all, the casual wear or the lounge wear, people used to have a couple of pairs at the most. You would wear it at 9 o'clock in the night and then, kind of change it in the morning as soon as just get your shower and so on. But here and now, 24/7, you had to look good. So you needed a lot of casual clothing. You needed a lot of knitwear, needed a lot of nightwear. You didn't want to wear the same nightwear actually third night in a row or a second night in a row, right? So this latent need, and most importantly, in India, kids wear is one of the most sought after segment. What happened to the kids wear? People didn't buy in the month of March and April. May, it was almost like a mayhem. I mean, how can we live without kids wear? I mean, for the benefit of actually our global audience, right? In India, there are three things actually which is always spoken about historically. Roti, which is meals, kapada, which is clothing, makan, which is house, right? Roti and makan was taken care actually in the scheme of things, but everybody forgot kapada. So kapada has become a basic necessity. In fact, therefore, e-commerce companies started lobbying for actually opening up sooner and so on. So all this, what it did, my customer is loyal. She's always there. She's saying, boss, under the safety network, whether you do online delivery, store to home delivery, or my society delivery, or you want to do actually bring a vehicle and then do a door delivery here or online, you do whatever you want. I will see you and want to buy you anywhere in the community. So this is true omni-channel. We opened up kiosks. We opened up, WhatsApp selling. We had Facebook selling kind of a situation. We had, in fact, of course, our online channels. Online channels. The moment I opened up my online channels in the month of May, we went 6x. We went 8x actually. There were days we just couldn't take the orders. In fact, it was such a huge influx of orders. Mind you, these were coming actually when half of the country was still under lockdown. So there was a huge actually change in the customer mindset. But she wanted to be like exactly what Prediman said. She wanted to be safe. She wanted to make sure that she wanted to have variety and freshness. But most importantly, she didn't want to spend money on fashion or trendy, looking clothing and all that, for quite some time. So that's exactly what the situation became, in fact, from the customer point of view. From the omni perspective, we had to really relook at our inventory holding. We have 350 stores in Max Fashion. We have actually 8 warehouses across the country. We really had to take entire inventory and then call it as a one bucket. We had to digitize the entire inventory and kind of make it available for customer, whether she comes from Jammu or Kanyakumari, or she comes from, Agartala or actually Gujarat. We had to make it available in a true omni sense. So we really had to become omnipresent. So she can see us anywhere, touch us anywhere, want us anywhere, and buy us anywhere. We had to supply it to her. In fact, this became the biggest challenge. And even now, going forward, this is going to become the biggest challenge. So in terms of omni strategy, we are going to continue to actually keep our stores, keep expanding as well. But most important part is we will connect each and every store, which is by the way, which is a strategy by every retailer in India. You actually convert your store into a supply point. You magically increase your actually complete, your spectrum of impact offer, right? So we will have not only our 8 warehouses, but 350 stores. All of them can service customers from anywhere in the country, which is a magical situation under the omni-channel strategy. So this is probably a biggest opportunity as well as learning for us.
Thank you, Dr. Anil. Definitely, your customer is a lady. I'm quite sure of this. A lot of she in there, and lot of talk about the needs of her. And do keep in mind the men as well in your strategy when you create for your product portfolio. Before I go to the she in our panel, I would definitely say that omni-channel strategy has become big, and creation of digital showrooms by various retailers around the world has become the key. How well, possibly in a 3D dimension, how could you display your product to your customer so that they have the best possible online view and they are enticed to buy your product, has become the key. It's become the norm and possibly will remain so for at least the next couple of years and beyond. Let's go to the She in our panel and ask her how important is e-commerce for Qatar Airways, and how carriers are trying to also look at e-commerce, and what difference is possibly a carrier thinking in terms of e-commerce logistics instead of the general moves that you used to do in the past.
Yeah, a good question, yes. It has actually drastically changed. I don't know if everybody remembers pre-COVID, there was a lot of e-commerce hoo-ha going on, and then everybody said, well, what is e-commerce? Because it would be in mail bags and it would be in courier, and it would be transported under different documents. So everybody always had, all airlines had some sort of e-commerce on board, but nobody could really put their finger on what that really meant. I think the biggest change is going from the store concept to the online shopping is that now we really see the e-commerce. They're really the packaging, the buying of the customer. And we also see that the volumes are so large that actually right now you can fill full planes with it. And of course, back pre-COVID, there were larger e-commerce producers that were already kind of doing that model. Now we really see an explosion of parties that actually want dedicated aircraft capacity in order to transport full freighters with e-commerce. Of course, the mini freighters are a solution for the medium-sized, smaller markets where, the Sri Lankas and stuff like that already were quite good in optimizing those aircrafts throughout COVID. Where we saw, and also into the US from specifically the Indian subcontinent, we have already seen dedicated planes for retail going up and down, and we actually also fly a few. Specifically from the Far East, we have also chosen, so we had already developed that e-commerce product, although, like I said, we never really knew what it was. What you see and what is interesting, at least when you look into the future, assuming that one day this will end, is that it is something that will grow faster than general cargo will. At least we believe that in Qatar Airways. And it will also be a very stable product to bet on when you have large amounts of capacity that could turn possibly into a liability when the market goes back to normal and all the passenger planes operate again. So from a strategy point of view, for bigger airlines, it absolutely makes sense to start investing in that now, because we already saw during Chinese New Year that just passed that, originally a lot of flights would get canceled, but we saw these e-commerce flights not being canceled and still being operated even during those periods. Now, of course, there were a lot of travel bans in China and stuff, and a lot of people stayed home, so the production was a bit more than it normally was. But if you look at the commodity as such, e-commerce is something that will continue to grow and will not go away. And because of the competitiveness of these companies and wanting to be door to door in the speedest, of time, because the She that we were talking about, if I look at myself, wants it not in 3 days, I want it today because I felt like buying it today. So the speed of that and the willingness to pay of that I want it now, obviously has changed completely, and it almost became an essential good, because although you saw in the beginning of the pandemic that people were scared, they were holding their money. Then they started spending again because they got some government money as well. And then it was like, okay, but now I want it now because I'm bored, because I'm at home and I want something to look forward to. So it suddenly became a very urgent good as well. And in terms of service level, almost in competition with the pharmaceuticals and the perishables that we were transporting. So long story short, I think in the future, the product is here to stay. I think it's a very safe bet for larger airlines to make sure you have that connection with your customer and the retailers, to make sure that you have a piece of that pie, although it's not the most urgent commodity that we are transporting, but it's definitely something that is not going anywhere anytime soon. So yeah, thank you.
Well, that's definitely, I picked up 3 key points from you, Kirsten, here. One, that e-commerce is going to sit very high on the strategy for Qatar Airways as well as the other carriers around. Number 2, why it's gaining popularity with the carriers is also possibly because it pays better. And number 3, she definitely wants it faster than he. So Dr. Anil, while you are prioritizing or focusing more on the she, make sure your supply chain is tuned to get the goods faster to her. Well, we'll come back to the point number 2 of the premium services in a bit, and I'll take that to the forwarders and ask them. Let me go over to Max and just quickly ask him, Max, what is it that the airports are trying to do to join the e-commerce logistics bandwagon? Are you looking at probably creating some replenishment centers or some distribution centers at the airport? Is there a demand to store goods for a longer period of time so that they can be replenished faster from the airports itself?
E-commerce, indeed, it's an upcoming product category at Frankfurt Airport as well in the last month. What we usually say in a normal pattern in Germany, or when it comes to importing goods to Europe, is that e-commerce business has been mostly an integrator driven part of the supply chain, and it changed to more a kind of a general cargo theme. So e-commerce can be every good, and we saw an increasing number of parcels, an increasing number of e-commerce in Frankfurt, and it led to two major challenges. One is on the customs side. So when you come to smaller pieces, you have to enhance the customs process more and more. And with additional regulations in Europe, with upcoming ICS2 regulations, you have to do the customs process on a piece level, and with a very, very fine and detailed description of your product to the ICN numbers up to 6 digits in future times. So what will help, we started to build up our cargo community system to get the import stream more visible, to get customs a better look on what is happening at the airport, to support this import stream of e-commerce. To increase the reliability, resilience of the import process, and more than that, we try to fasten that as well. And as an airport providing infrastructure, it also affects the land side, because with normal general cargo, you have larger forwarders that pick up a large number of pieces at one time. And when you get to e-commerce, you get more and more people that affecting the land freight infrastructure, smaller amounts of parcels with small trucks that coming to the airport. So we see a change in how the infrastructure, the land side infrastructure, is used. And then finally we'll come to the point in what we are thinking at, and we are not thinking only at an airport about it, we're thinking at the whole community at Frankfurt Airport, is what additional infrastructure will be perhaps need in the future. Will there be kind of a distribution center, and where should it be located? Should it be on the airport premises or alongside at the airport, just to have the most valuable land directly at the airport to the fastest handling process is still available, and the distribution and storage facility more aside of the airport. These are thoughts that we are already in, and as Kirsten said, I think this sector, e-commerce, is here to stay, and we have to adopt as an airport. But infrastructure investments are investments that are very costly at the first point. They have to earn their revenue in the long term. So you'd have to be very, very sure that you can get your yield out of it the next 10, 15, 20 years. So it's not easy to step in, and it's a long process to find the right decision and the right way to participate in this boom.
Very certainly. Infrastructure is not something that can be built in a flash, and you need time for it. Let me go over and get a quick word from our both our forwarders here. The apparel and the fashion industry has been right in the forefront of using premium services from the forwarders as well as the carriers in the past, assuming that fashion goes out of fashion very, very fast. So let me start with Prediman. You getting a quick word from you. Do you still see the demand for premium services as of now? Or do you think a lot of the fashion and apparel, due to cost reasons, has moved more to the ocean freight?
See, as far as air freight fashion, that express thing, no, that will take a lot of time as far as I see it. But we are seeing the sentiment growing may not be towards the fashion, but towards the, when we one side say that all the consumers, freight forwarders, airline, airports are convinced it's going to be e-shopping. So that means speed will automatically come in. So whether I want a fashion item or I want a casual wear, I want it next day. So speed will automatically come in, and that may demand some kind of a premium service, but not per se, especially for the fashion like it used to be. So in earlier years, we have seen this February and March used to be totally chock-a-block. Capacities were not available. Anybody was ready to pay whatever premium on the air freights. That's not there today. So you get space even if line flights are not they're operating. So it's kind of a balanced supply and demand today. And I don't see it's going to be that kind of a premium payments in near future.
Good. So, Samir, can I also bring in you here, and maybe you can add something from a lot of global perspective. How do you see the demand for premium services from the apparel and fashion customers?
Sorry about this. Technology. So I'll categorize this into two different categories. One is the formal wear, and the other one is the casual wear, comfort wear, sports wear. And we did see transformation on both sides of the fashion over the last year. And as they say, your own experience is the best learning curve. Somebody like me who used to be 365 days in a suit, you can see me in a polo shirt, t-shirt today. So that's a change that has happened in the fashion or the requirement of the garments as far as the consumer is concerned. So as far as the formal wear is concerned, I don't think so. We would see a premium demand coming in, or a requirement for a premium or an express freight movement coming in, at least not for the next 12 months. But on the sports goods, on the casual wear, I would see that there would be, and there still is, a fair bit of express demand that comes in, especially from our global customers. So that we feel is only going to intensify, and thus we are already pre-planning that and ensuring that we have enough capacity to cater to that demand. That's one part of it. But surely there has been a shift on the fashion side from the air freight to ocean freight, and I would say if I look at how we have done in our company, or what kind of a percentage change that has happened, I would say about 20% to 25% of a shift has been towards ocean freight. So there has been a bit of a slowdown on the premium service on overall apparel sector.
That's an interesting outlook, Samir, and good to know that only a 20% or shift has happened to the ocean, and I hope the air freight wins back its business. That brings us to the end of our discussion, but I'm going to pick up a few questions from the Q&A that I've received. So the first question comes in from Mr. Vipin Jain, and this is for Kirsten. Is Qatar Airways considering a switch to combi flights due changes in demand for packs and cargo? I mean, freighters have been the nature of the game in the last 1 year, and going forward, I mean, I'm sure there have been a lot of learnings from how possibly cargo could get loaded on the flights, and is there something that Qatar Airways is thinking in that regard, with more of combi flights in the future, and possibly making use of the cabin for cargo as well?
Yeah, so we obviously still now operate the passenger aircrafts with only belly cargo. Those aircrafts are not affected. When the passenger man picks up again, they will add passengers there. We have rebuilt 6 777-300s into mini freighters, taking all the seats out. And yeah, we learned a lot from that, because there's not a tremendous amount of markets that can handle that. I mean, first of all, when you talk about your whole supply chain, is that the handling is extremely difficult. It's all manual, it's with luggage belt, it's with catering carts. You need about 15 people to manually load that. The packages cannot be heavier than 20 something kilos. So you really need that retail market to operate that. We have done, and we have approval for, let's say, non-leaking vegetables, flowers type of thing, but then you also have a challenge with the temperature in the cabin, because the lowest degree that you have in the cabin is based on the passengers, which is 18 degrees. When you look at the usability of an aircraft like that, with the long extended ground times of about 5 hours at each airport, your block hour utilization is obviously not amazing. If you do an average of 15 block hours with a regular aircraft, then you probably just do 10 to 11 with a mini freighter due to the extended handling and stuff like that. So yes, we are using them. We use them many freighters. Yes, for 90%, we use them at retail markets from India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka into various areas, but also from Indonesia. We have a successful product on the mini freighter. And with the thought in e-commerce and the growth thereof, you would think that it would continue to work. However, it always stays a battle with the passenger, right? So even if passenger comes and they want these aircraft back and they say, okay, it's time now to put the seats in, it becomes a business case story. Now, I don't think that will happen anytime very soon, that they need only 6 aircraft back. But we will continue to operate these mini freighters as combi flights, as you call them, in order to maximize the markets that we can serve. Again, although it is mostly e-commerce markets that are good for those aircraft, we know that commodity will stay. How long? Depends on how quick the passenger operation comes up, and we can fill those aircraft again. But I think we're quite safe with these aircraft types for the next year or so. Yeah.
Obviously, Kirsten, I do understand that the challenges of running freighters in various markets are immense, and even though if you remove seats, it's not always that you can fit in all kinds of cargoes in there. India is a very unique market with larger commodities moving as smaller packages, whereas globally you have more cargo moving on skids, which are difficult to load through the door of the passenger cabin. Maybe the aircraft manufacturers are listening, and like Max said, you can't build infrastructure, you can't build aircrafts in a very quick time, but maybe there's something for the aircraft makers of the world to have a look and try and build hybrid doors which could possibly collapse or get bigger to move in skids. Taking out seats could be much easier, so aircrafts could be converted in a quicker time to suit in some part of cargo capacity to be loaded on the seats. I will pick up the next question, which is actually for Dr. Anil. We're going to get out of time, so this is possibly the last one that I'll pick. Is there, Dr. Anil, is there a focus on opening opportunities for rural manufacturers, artisans, self-help groups from our villages? India's got host of huge number of villages through your stores and giving them access to some international markets? Very interesting question. Actually, the name is not there of who sent it.
Well, it's a great question actually. Yes. Just before I answer the question, I'd like to reiterate that while she is our main customer, we have a significant chunk of our actually products are menswear, right? And we have a huge audience actually in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, where it's a reverse of it actually. Their men drive in fact the purchases in fact. So where she does it, it's the tier 1 and tier 2. Whereas the 3 and 4, it is driven by men, and then it is almost like an event and so on. So just want to clarify that that men's they have not been forgotten. So you're very much core to the core in our thoughts and in our designs and so on. Now coming to the question actually, see Max and then Landmark Group, at least from the Indian context of our private label, 90-95% is actually sourced domestically. So that being the case, we have lot of SME vendors ourselves in fact. Therefore, our direct actually assistance or even support is there very much actually at the SME level vendors in fact. So much so it's worth mentioning, during COVID, we ended up actually distributing thousands of actually the food kits or even the emergency kits actually for thousands of our factory workers in fact all around the country. So we did that as a part of our life trust and so on. So very much Landmark Group's strategy is very much actually incorporating in fact the SME vendors and then some of the smaller manufacturers. So much so there are quite a few vendors who have grown with Max actually over the last 20 odd years, or over the last 20 odd years with the Landmark Group. So therefore, not only the domestic the opportunities are there, the significant chunk of actually even sourcing happens for our international operations as well. So that's very much already a part of our DNA. In fact, that's what I would like to say. And then we'll always continue to explore more opportunities, because that is a winning formula right now. So I mean, that is a clear cut answer, and then clear cut in fact a strategy even for us. That's a part of our DNA currently.
Wonderful. Good to know that.
Yes, did I answer that?
Yes. Hi. Thank you, Dr. Anil. And good to know firstly that men sit very, very high on your product portfolio as well. It's just to add a little bit to what Dr. Anil said, that there's obviously going to be a lot of D2C movement online. The online channel is giving power to a small little cobbler sitting somewhere in Agra and trying to build one pair of shoes to supply to somebody who's sitting in Birmingham. That power has come to the smallest manufacturer around the world, and I feel that D2C is going to really shine, and you will not need only an Amazon or a Flipkart, etc., to sell or transact globally now. Let me just quickly go over to Samir and ask him, Samir, what are the markets that you are seeing possibly on the apparel and fashion side growing? I mean, what are the manufacturing countries where you see an area of growth over the next year or so, and the consumption? Where do you see that happening more? Please unmute yourself.
That's a very interesting question, Yash. From the manufacturing side, or the sourcing side, I feel there's a lot of shift happening to Bangladesh, Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines. So it's really Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia area. From consumption perspective, I think US still remains very, very strong for us, and as I see the market trends, it remains very, very strong. Europe, currently, if we talk from current perspective, it is slow, and we know why. But it's going to pick up drastically as soon as the lockdowns are lifted in many parts of the European world. So I would say Europe will pick up quite a bit. We also are foreseeing a huge amount of growth in South Africa. So these are the markets that I feel from consumption perspective, which is going to grow a lot.
Thank you, Samir. Kirsten, just a quick word from you as well on the areas of big demand that you see.
Yeah, we see that Sri Lanka is actually very stable. Bangladesh had quite a hit by the end of last year due to the lockdown in Europe. So we did see that had a huge effect on the export from there. It is gradually ramping up, to be honest with you. And like Samir said, Indonesia as well. We operate a mini freighter there, so we see that also upcoming. Of course, Vietnam is quite stable, to be honest. In terms of consumption, specifically for retail, by far US. Although we are not that dominant into the US in terms of capacity and much more in Europe. We do see that if you look at US and Central America, there we see quite good import volumes going forward, and still a lot of shopping happening in terms of e-commerce, and where we have the most flights dedicated going forward. But again, Europe is still also a big market, of course. So I would say Southeast Asia and then Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, consumption by far Americas and Europe. Yeah, so same as Samir said, we see the same O&D flows and directions.
Great to know a lot of demand coming up. A quick word from somebody who pivots the global supply chains, the airport, Max. Where do you see the demand coming in? I mean, obviously Europe has been in the middle of various lockdowns. Where do you see in this period, and possibly once the lockdowns open, as the demand coming in for more flights to go in and out from?
What we expect to see in the upcoming month is that with the vaccination going on in Europe as well, starting slowly but surely, we'll see perhaps a regain in export volumes, a regain in industry production, as well as an upcoming demand in the fashion and e-commerce, not as much in e-commerce, much more in fashion and normal retail store restocking cycles. What we see is that a lot of restocking has to be done because there's a lack of goods to be shipped around Europe, and therefore there's increasing demand from the regions of China, Southeast Asia, as well as in India. That we're tending to develop connections in between India and Germany or Europe in general to meet the upcoming demands that we see coming for sure.
Well, that brings us to the end. The studio is telling me get off. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for staying logged in for this very important session on fashion and apparels. My lovely panel, Dr. Anil, Samir, Max, Prediman, Kirsten, who did I miss? Thank you so much. You guys were great. You were awesome. And this is me, Yash, signing off from the studio of ACFI. Parul, back to you. Take us forward and over to the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.